Wedbush adding Uber to its best ideas list, highlighting the company's positioning when it comes to autonomous vehicles. NVIDIA CEO Jensen Huang spoke to Yahoo Finance earlier today about the revenue he's expecting to see from self-driving cars.
Well, in order to train a robot, you need a lot of data. And the first version of consumer robots that we're all going to engage is a self-driving car. And we've been working on self-driving cars now for some time, and the business is some $5 billion estimated run rate this year.
For more, we're bringing in Scott Devitt, Managing Director of Equity Research at Wedbush Securities. And Scott, I want to start with just Jensen Huang, clearly bullish on autonomous driving there. How does Uber fit into the autonomous driving story?
Well, yeah, assuming that we get there in some duration that's investable, then I think that Uber supports the autonomous industry by providing distribution. So it's a hybrid model such that autonomous vehicles get added into the human vehicle options that exist in the Uber marketplace, and they create various partnerships on a global basis that become additive to their overall portfolio. But the bigger question really is more around the timeline of autonomous, because it's comforting to think that Uber may be well positioned when we get to fully autonomous, but that's probably the greatest risk to its business model as well. And our call is that in the interim, Uber's competitive position, the cash flow that it generates, are more going to drive its price than that longer term autonomous position. And so the back and forth that you've seen at the end of 2024 and you'll likely see in 2025 is more going to be around how successful Waymo and Tesla are or aren't in terms of moving forward this autonomous initiative in a fast path plan.
So do you think Uber has taken the right approach in partnering? I mean, Waymo will be available on Uber at some point where Waymos are available. Was that a smart move, do you think? And is that going to be helpful for Uber?
I do. I think, companies can't do everything, right? So if you think about Waymo at scale, Waymo did 4 million rides in 2024. Uber did 100 billion, so 0.04% of the rides. So the number of vehicles that Waymo would need to own, because they own their vehicles, whereas Uber, somebody else owns the vehicle. You're talking hundreds of billions of dollars of investment, all regulatory approvals, mapping capabilities such that it functions in every city. We may get there, and Waymo's, at the moment, likely the best position, but we're nowhere near there. So in terms of Uber taking that burden on, I think that they've taken the best approach, which is this partnership approach for their business model, and let others make these significant investments around the game-changing technology. So when you fast forward, call it 10, 15 years, who will be the biggest winner? Well, if autonomous proves to not be something that functions economically or that Tesla figures out the technology, then Uber will win the most. If it is, then it's going to be a different company. And so you're playing this like back and forth game until you determine what is actually going to happen with the technology. And that's the part that nobody really knows quite yet, except that Waymo works in a few markets and Tesla doesn't work at all. It works as a novelty for those that own Teslas, like myself. But every time I turn on FSD in my own vehicle, if I didn't intervene, I'd be dead. So it doesn't work at scale for people to not have humans in a seat, and we don't know when that's actually going to be.
And Scott,
not to be too blunt.
Yeah.
Well, and thinking about that from an investor perspective, if I'm an owner in Uber shares, what is timeliness for autonomous to start working? Like, is that a 2030 story that it then becomes maybe part of the story, or is it a 10-year story? How do you think about the timeline when it comes to that?
So Elon Musk has said that they will have robotaxis on the road in calendar 2025. And if you look at the performance of the two stocks, you could argue or debate what's been driving each stock, but certainly a factor has been autonomous. And so you have to ask yourself first, do you think robotaxis will be on the road in 2025? Anybody that has or has tested FSD V13, which is available on Tesla vehicles that have the latest hardware, but not the vast majority of their fleet. It's better than what existed before, but better is not good enough. To have a car on the road that doesn't have a human driving it needs to be best. 0.00000% defect rate. And so 2025 in that debate, as it relates to Tesla specifically, seems like it's a no, in my opinion. As it relates to Waymo, it's more of a question of how many cities can they do? What are their interests in growing into other cities? How quickly? And what are their long-term ambitions in terms of, do they want to do this, or do they want to ultimately license their technology to others? And then as it relates to your broader question of like when, we don't know when. You know, if it's not 2025, I think the push and pull in terms of valuations will work back in Uber's favor for a period of time. When this all comes together, you know, I think I'd have to acknowledge, and I do, that like this isn't a forever stock because we don't know the ultimate answer yet.
Right.
I'm speaking about Uber. It's good enough for now, which given a 30% pullback makes it, you know, quite appealing. But the question is not going to likely be resolved in 2025 and may not be in 2030 either.
I want to sneak in another question on another theme that you're looking at that's also been talked about at CES, and that's Agentic AI, right? This idea that we're going to get these AI assistants and agents. The stakes are a lot lower than safety and being on the road, right? But what would be your top pick linked to that idea of Agentic AI? Would it be something like an Airbnb that's going to be able to use it? Is it a Meta? What do you think?
Well, I think that the endpoint consumer platforms, that the Airbnbs, Bookings, and Amazons over time will find ways to weave agents into their business models. I think the two most notable in the more short term are going to be Meta and Alphabet. And so in terms of capabilities from a digital assistant standpoint and otherwise, that those are the first that are likely going to incorporate this. And keep in mind, you know, as you know, that like there's hundreds of billions of dollars being spent on deploying the capital to allow corporates to build the services for AI. And we're now entering this phase where the corporates are going to need to figure out how to build those capabilities into their businesses to justify the investment that they're made. And I think the two that really stand out, both of which we do recommend, and Alphabet is on our best idea list as well, would be Meta and Alphabet.
Scott, we have to leave it there. Appreciate you joining us today.
Thanks so much.